The emergency session of the Supreme War Council convened in Tokyo on July 9, 1944, following receipt of the final transmission from Lieutenant General Yoshitsugu Saito on Saipan, reporting that organized resistance was ending and that surviving defenders would conduct final attacks against American positions before the garrison was annihilated. Prime Minister Hideki Tojo presided over the meeting with awareness that the loss of Saipan represented strategic catastrophe that extended beyond military defeat to fundamental challenge to Japan's defensive perimeter and to the political stability of his government. The assembled military and civilian leaders understood that Saipan's location placed American B-29 bombers within range of the Japanese home islands, and that the defeat demonstrated American capability to assault and capture heavily defended positions, despite Japanese preparations that had been considered adequate to repel invasion. The recognition that absolute defense sphere that had been proclaimed as impenetrable had been breached created crisis that combined military, political, and psychological dimensions. General Hideki Tojo's position as both Prime Minister and Army Minister gave him direct responsibility for the military strategy that had led to Saipan's defense and made him personally accountable for the defeat. The final transmission from Saito had arrived after 3 weeks of desperate fighting, during which Imperial General Headquarters had received increasingly urgent requests for reinforcements and air support that could not be provided because American naval and air superiority prevented Japanese forces from reaching Saipan. The garrison of 30,000 soldiers and sailors had fought according to doctrine that emphasized inflicting maximum casualties on attackers. But the American forces had absorbed losses and had continued advancing with material superiority that overwhelmed Japanese defensive positions through combination of naval gunfire, aerial bombardment, and ground assault supported by tanks and artillery. Admiral Soemu Toyoda, Commander-in-Chief of the Combined Fleet, reported to the Council that the naval battle of the Philippine Sea fought on June 19th and 20th had resulted in catastrophic losses to Japanese carrier aviation that eliminated the possibility of contesting American naval supremacy in the Central Pacific. The destruction of over 300 carrier aircraft in a single day's fighting had been compounded by the sinking of 3 carriers, including the fleet flagship Taiho. The defeat meant that the combined fleet could not prevent American forces from conducting amphibious operations against any target within range of American naval forces. The implications extended beyond Saipan to recognition that the entire defensive perimeter was vulnerable to American assault wherever they chose to attack. General Yoshijiro Umezu, Chief of the Army General Staff, presented assessment of defensive preparations on other islands in the Marianas and in the Caroline Islands that acknowledged similar vulnerabilities to what had been demonstrated at Saipan. The fortifications consisted of concrete bunkers, artillery positions, and tunnel systems that were designed to survive bombardment and to exact heavy casualties from attacking forces. But the Saipan experience demonstrated that American forces possessed firepower and persistence sufficient to reduce such defenses systematically, regardless of casualties they suffered. The tactical question was not whether Japanese garrisons could hold against American assault, but how long resistance could be sustained and what casualties could be inflicted before positions were overrun. The civilian casualties on Saipan created additional dimension to the catastrophe that had not been factor in earlier Pacific battles fought on islands with minimal Japanese civilian population. Saipan had been Japanese administrative center for the South Pacific Mandate since 1919 and had developed civilian community of over 20,000 Japanese settlers. The reports from the final days of battle included accounts of civilians committing mass suicide at locations like Mapi Point, rather than surrendering to American forces. The suicides reflected combination of fear about American treatment of prisoners based on Japanese propaganda and pressure from military authorities who portrayed surrender as dishonor. The deaths of thousands of civilians represented tragedy that created moral questions about military leadership that had failed to protect Japanese citizens. Navy Minister Admiral Mitsumasa Yonai addressed the strategic implications of losing Saipan for Japan's ability to defend the home islands against air attack. The distance from Saipan to Tokyo was approximately 1,500 miles, which placed the capital within range of B-29 bombers operating from airfields that Americans would construct on Saipan once the island was secured. The strategic bombing campaign that had devastated German cities could now be applied to Japanese urban areas with industrial concentrations and civilian populations that were vulnerable to incendiary attacks. The defensive measures available to protect Japanese cities were inadequate because fighter interceptors lacked performance to effectively engage B-29s flying at high altitude, and because anti-aircraft artillery was insufficient in quantity and effectiveness. Foreign Minister Mamoru Shigemitsu presented diplomatic assessment that suggested the fall of Saipan would strengthen Allied determination to pursue unconditional surrender and would eliminate any possibility of negotiated settlement that might preserve Japanese territorial integrity or political institutions. The recent Allied success in Normandy, combined with the Saipan defeat, demonstrated that both Germany and Japan were losing their respective wars, and that Allied strategy of defeating Axis powers completely was succeeding. The diplomatic isolation that Japan faced meant that no neutral power could effectively mediate negotiations, and that Japan would need to either achieve military reversal that changed Allied calculations or would need to accept defeat on Allied terms. The debate within the Supreme War Council centered on whether to acknowledge publicly the extent of the Saipan defeat, or whether to minimize the loss through propaganda that emphasized Japanese resistance and American casualties while downplaying the strategic significance. Tojo advocated for maintaining public morale through claims that the garrison had fought heroically and that the battle demonstrated Japanese determination to resist regardless of cost. The opposing view was that Japanese public needed to understand the gravity of the situation to prepare for hardships that strategic bombing and potential invasion would bring. The decision was to announce the fall of Saipan while emphasizing the courage of defenders and while avoiding discussion of implications for home island's defense. General Korechika Anami, serving as commander of the 2nd Area Army, reported from his headquarters about defensive preparations being implemented throughout Japan proper in anticipation that American advances would eventually threaten the homeland. The preparations included constructing fortifications, organizing civilian defense forces, and planning for evacuations of urban populations to rural areas. The measures reflected recognition that the war was entering phase where Japanese territory would become battlefield and where distinction between military and civilian spheres would disappear. The total war mobilization that had been directed at enemies was now being applied to defending Japan itself. The political consequences of Saipan's loss manifested within days of the Supreme War Council meeting when members of the Diet and civilian government officials began calling for Tojo's resignation based on assessment that his leadership had led Japan into untenable strategic position. The criticism focused on the decision to expand the war to include the United States and on the optimistic projections about Japanese ability to defend the perimeter that had proven unrealistic. The political pressure combined with loss of confidence from military leadership led to Tojo submitting his resignation on July 18th, 9 days after learning of Saipan's fall. The cabinet change represented acknowledgement that the strategic situation required different leadership, even though the fundamental problems facing Japan were unchanged by personnel changes. Lieutenant General Kuniaki Koizo's appointment as Prime Minister reflected compromise between military factions and represented continuity in strategic approach despite change in leadership. Koiso lacked authority to fundamentally alter Japan's war strategy because the military services retained control over operational decisions and because the emperor system created constraints on political flexibility. The strategic assessment that Koiso inherited was that Japan faced continuing American advances across the Pacific with inadequate naval and air forces to contest those advances, and with home islands increasingly vulnerable to strategic bombing and eventual invasion. The operational lessons that Imperial General Headquarters attempted to derive from Saipan focused on tactical improvements in defensive fighting rather than on strategic questions about whether island garrisons could successfully resist American assault. The analysis emphasized need for better coordination between Army and Navy defenders, for more effective use of terrain in constructing defensive positions, and for more sophisticated tactics in conducting final attacks when positions became untenable. The assumption remained that inflicting sufficient casualties on American forces would eventually create political pressure for negotiated settlement, even though evidence from Saipan suggested that American tolerance for casualties exceeded Japanese projections. The industrial planning that followed Saipan's loss involved accelerating aircraft production for homeland defense and for kamikaze operations that were being developed as method to offset American material superiority through willingness to accept complete loss of attacking aircraft and pilots. The strategic logic was that conventional air operations could not achieve parity with American forces, but that suicide attacks might inflict damage disproportionate to resources expended. The ethical and practical implications of institutionalizing suicide attacks were subordinated to military necessity in planning that assumed continued fighting was preferable to surrender regardless of costs. The intelligence assessments about American intentions following Saipan projected that next objectives would be islands closer to Philippines and Japan proper, with ultimate goal being invasion of home islands if Japan did not surrender. The timeline projections suggested that American forces would reach Okinawa by early 1945 and might attempt invasion of Kyushu by late 1945 or early 1946. The preparations for defending against such invasions involved mobilizing entire Japanese population, including training civilians in combat techniques and preparing them psychologically for sacrifices that defense would require. The vision of total war defense assumed that Japanese willingness to die fighting would inflict casualties sufficient to make invasion prohibitively costly for Americans. The economic reality that accompanied strategic planning was that Japanese industrial capacity was declining under effects of submarine warfare that had severed maritime supply lines and of strategic bombing that was beginning to destroy production facilities. The loss of resource-rich territories in Southeast Asia meant that Japan lacked raw materials necessary to sustain war production. The shipping losses meant that even resources from territories still under Japanese control could not be transported to home islands. The combination of resource scarcity and production disruption created a situation where Japanese military strength was degrading continuously while American strength was increasing. When Japanese High Command learned Saipan was lost on July 9, 1944, they confronted strategic catastrophe that placed American bombers within range of home islands, demonstrated vulnerability of absolute defense sphere, created political crisis that led to Tojo's resignation, and forced recognition that American material superiority and willingness to accept casualties meant that Japanese defensive strategy could delay but not prevent American advance toward Japan proper. The civilian deaths at Saipan foreshadowed human costs that total war defense would inflict on Japanese population. The naval defeat in Philippine Sea eliminated possibility of contesting American naval operations. The strategic situation required either military reversal that seemed increasingly unlikely or acceptance of defeat that leadership was unwilling to contemplate. The psychological impact on military leadership extended beyond strategic calculations to recognition that fundamental assumptions about Japanese fighting spirit compensating for material disadvantages had been invalidated. The Saipan garrison had demonstrated willingness to die fighting, but this determination had not prevented defeat when facing enemy with overwhelming firepower and logistics capability. The cultural emphasis on spiritual strength over material factors was being challenged by battlefield realities where courage and determination were insufficient against systematic application of industrial warfare methods. The intellectual adjustment required to acknowledge these realities while maintaining commitment to continued resistance created cognitive dissonance that shaped Japanese strategic thinking through the war's final year. The response was to continue resistance through increasingly desperate measures, including kamikaze tactics and total mobilization, while hoping that American casualties would create opportunity for negotiated settlement that preserved some Japanese interests. The recognition that Saipan's loss marked transition from offensive operations to defense of homeland represented acknowledgement that the war Japan had initiated was being lost, but that surrender remained an unacceptable option, requiring continued fighting regardless of inevitable outcome.